Elizabeth, welcome to the Wharton Tech Talks podcast. We like to begin with a wild hook of a question. What's something about you that someone can't possibly discover anywhere else online that they would only possibly know after listening to this podcast? So you have some time to think about that, and your answer to that question will come at the end.
Great. I'll start coming up with some options.
All right, sounds good. Welcome, Elizabeth Pemmerl, Chief Revenue Officer at GitHub. Elizabeth has had a remarkable career spanning roles in marketing, public relations, and leadership positions. She holds a bachelor's from Bates College and has completed executive education at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Before we get into careers, Elizabeth, could you share a little about your background and upbringing? Where did you grow up, and who was young Elizabeth? What was she concerned with, interested in, and looking forward to?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Kofi. I'm glad we can continue the conversation since we met at Wharton. Let's see, I grew up in New England. So I grew up in Massachusetts in a really small town and went to public school there and public high school and absolutely loved it. But there were a couple hundred students in my graduating class, and then went on to a small college with just a couple hundred students in my graduating class. So I think I was really looking forward to introducing my future self to a bigger world, experiencing more, traveling, culture. And really, there was not a clear career path in my head. I was always very into achievement. I wanted to do well at whatever I was doing, but that was my schoolwork. That was my competitive equestrian career. That was being a good friend. And my career sort of meandered through a few different iterations in the early days. And it was really always just powered by achievement and by widening my scope of understanding of the world around me.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit about this equestrian career. What got you into that?
Yeah, I said I grew up in a small town, and so it was very rural. Horses were everywhere. And of course, as a 5-year-old, I said, Mom, Dad, I really want to ride horses. And that started a 25-year career in show jumping, including riding in college and after college. And if you know anything about horses, they're both incredibly expensive and incredibly time consuming. So I had to work really hard to make the money to ride. I had to work off my expenses. And two, I devoted tons and tons of hours to it. And as anyone who has pursued something like competitive athletics or really high achieving musician, et cetera, you know how many hours and how much dedication it takes. And for me, I think it kind of created this imprint and this muscle that I built where I knew if I worked really, really hard at something, I would see the outcome reflected in achievement. I think it really helped shape who I am.
That's amazing. Do you still ride today?
I don't. The money and time sort of caught up with me, and it's hard to do that while maintaining a career. But I decided instead to take up tennis, which is much more accessible. And so now I apply that same rigor and dedication to my burgeoning tennis career.
Yeah, definitely easier to travel with rackets than to try to get a horse across the country for like a corporate retreat. So
That's right.
I can imagine. Yeah. Okay. Switching tack now to talk about your early career. So your early roles were in marketing and project management. Tell us a little bit more about those experiences, how or if they influence your subsequent transition into the tech industry.
They sure did. When I graduated college, I had plans, as I mentioned, to go see the world. I accepted a job in Madrid, Spain, and was going to move there for a few years. And because of family circumstances, I ended up staying at home for a few years post-graduation. And that made me in the market for a job quickly. And the job I ended up landing was with the state of Rhode Island. And they hired me as a project manager. And I was working on various tech implementation projects, specifically for the division of motor vehicles. I landed as a fresh college grad. I was a rhetoric major, so communications-oriented studies. And now I'm managing technical programs, doing IT implementations. There was a lot I was doing. You could probably argue I was incredibly underqualified to be doing, but it was incredible experience because they said, go figure it out. And so I got these unbelievable opportunities to deliver pretty large scale programs and saw how technology was improving both how the government agencies were able to deliver their missions and how it was actually improving the end user services for citizens. And that, I think, sparked really in me a passion for two things: the public sector missions and how I could help support them, and then also tech, because I saw the direct impact that I was able to deliver through technical programs.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Let's take a step back and talk a little bit about this rhetoric major. How did you discover that was even an option? What was the course like? Just tell us a little bit more about that very specific and I think very unique choice to major in this area.
Yeah, I didn't know it was an option when I arrived at Bates. I've always had a passion for words, for reading, for writing, for the power of really good oration. And lo and behold, I find myself at Bates and learn this is an entire major where you basically learn about the study of influence through narration and the written word. Fell in love with it. I did my senior thesis on the rhetoric of apologia, which is the study of apology and what's effective and how people are influenced by apology or not. Didn't know exactly how I was going to parlay that into a career and certainly didn't expect it to translate into a future in tech, much less enterprise sales. But here we are.
Interesting. Let's final thing on this rhetoric piece, on the rhetoric of apologia. What's maybe a quick soundbite? What's the thing that you think you wish most people would know about what it takes to make a good apology, what a good apology comprises?
I'll tell you what a common apology comprises, particularly for public figures. If you go back and look at many of the sort of major moments of apology in politicians, for example, they generally apologize for something which is not the actual thing that happened. They apologize for something adjacent. So mentally, you think they're apologizing for the core issue or item, but they actually apologize for something slightly to the right or left of it.
Interesting. Is it still effective then at achieving the end goal without having them backtrack on a... Okay. That's something we'll keep in mind.
That's your homework. You can go listen to some big apology moments and see if you spot that trend.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Awesome. So you graduate with this degree in rhetoric. You have these roles in project marketing and project management. Tell us a little bit about your transition to GitHub. What inspired you to join GitHub in particular? What do you like the most about working at the company as well?
So I'd been doing government tech for a while and ended up moving to DC to do it at a federal level. And at the time, a friend of a friend reached out. His name is Ben Balter, and he's still at GitHub today. He's one of the very original GitHubbers. And he said GitHub is looking to bring our GitHub product into government agencies. And GitHub at its core is source code management and collaboration. Basically, it's a place for developers. It's the home for all developers, really, to collaborate on code and manage that code. And I had seen over and over government rewriting the same code through contractors, not able to secure that code in a centralized place. It created all sorts of technical debt and other issues. And I thought, wow, this product is purpose built for some of these problems I'm experiencing day in, day out as I consult with government agencies. So I got really excited about the product opportunity and the problem it was solving. So got an opportunity to join specifically to start up our public sector practice. So I joined as employee. I was in the probably low 200s at the time, the company size in terms of employee count, and spent the first probably year helping create the infrastructure so that federal government could take advantage of GitHub, things like getting us on a GSA purchasing schedule, helping with our terms and conditions and making them compliant with government federal acquisition regulations, et cetera. Such a fun time in those early days.
Yeah, and it's been quite the journey since. I mean, you spent a decade at GitHub so far, lots of different roles. You mentioned you were in this public sector office and you served as director, transitioned to 2 VP roles and an SVP role, and now Chief Revenue Officer. I'm really curious, especially because this is an MBA podcast, what career development and leadership principles guided this journey through the organization?
It's been an incredible ride. Yeah, it's just been over a decade now. And I think when I look at the career trajectory, the opportunities were plentiful because we were growing so quickly and the product was so popular. And we've had this phenomenal culture of growth from within. So I was continuously offered new challenges. What's remained true, though, are a few kind of core tenets of who we are as a revenue organization and as a company. We really believe in being customer zero. And what I mean by that is we use GitHub to build GitHub. We leverage our own tools before we bring them to the global development community and to our enterprise customers. So I usually start my day reviewing GitHub issues to see what sort of approvals or conversations I need to contribute to. We run our sort of weekly rhythm of business through GitHub discussions. We use GitHub Copilot for our support workflows for our customers. It means we're very, very close to the tools. We can speak to them in a very detailed and familiar way. And we also know where we want improvements in the tool. And that helps drive some of the product roadmap and also means we can have very authentic, incredible customer conversations. So that's part one. Part two, speaking of customers, we are very, very committed to getting their feedback and bringing that feedback directly to our product and engineering teams. We have a whole program we call Project Yak, sort of in the flavor of yak shaving, which is a software development meme. And we bring all of this product feedback through GitHub into a centralized project board, and we do all of our prioritization there. That product and engineering are getting real-time, prioritized, very detailed feedback on what customers are asking for. And then we're able, on the revenue side, in our customer-facing roles, to watch sort of what's being committed to, what those deadlines are, and bring that information back to our customers to close the feedback loop. And that flywheel has worked really, really well for us.
Interesting. I'm curious about this. Everybody talks about soliciting customer feedback, right? And that being a real source of value for every business. What have been the biggest challenges, I guess, and successes that you guys have chalked in this area in terms of really building momentum on that process of soliciting feedback?
One of the biggest lessons we've learned is that in order to get a volume of feedback, the barrier to entry to submitting that feedback has to be as low as possible. What I mean is, when we started this project, we said, okay, great. We're going to ask our customer success managers and solution engineers to fill out this issue template with 35 fields that gives us all of the information about the feature the customer wants. Well, guess what? Our uptick was pretty light because most of our customer success managers don't have time or they weren't prioritizing that level of feedback. And honestly, we probably only needed 20% of it to make some prioritization decisions. And then we could go deeper if we needed to. That's why we implemented a really lightweight process to capture that feedback. We have a command out of Slack where anyone can say /customer feedback. It automatically gets pushed into the repo for prioritization. We have a really lightweight form. And then we really actively engage our support team. They keep a lot of detailed information on the kind of support requests they're getting from customers. And so we couple all of that information with the frontline product teams, like the customer success managers and solutions engineers. And that creates a really nice holistic list. So get a lot of light feedback and make it as easy as possible to submit is my main learning in this whole process.
Interesting. Okay. I think that's something that's going to be very helpful to hear for all the aspiring entrepreneurs or even enterprise software developers who might be listening to this. So that's, I think, still on your journey through GitHub, particularly as a leader. What are some of the leadership principles that have guided you as you've made a rise through this organization?
I think a couple of things. I think the most important thing in being a leader is to be consistent. And that's really important to me and the leaders I work for. And it is something I try to remind myself of every week. People can perform their best when they know what to expect and when they are investing energy in the work and not investing energy thinking about responses to the work or expected outcomes from the meeting. Showing up with consistency on both what I expect and how I will react is one of, I think, the strengths I embody as a leader, but it's something I have to work at. The second thing is I have found in many cases, really strong leadership comes from team members who have actually done the job of the teams that they are managing. And what I mean is, because I was an individual seller, I am very familiar with the workflow our sellers need to navigate in order to, for example, get a quote out to a customer, in order to submit an issue to our deal desk. And the closer you can be, whether it's presently or in the past, to actually having done that work, the more effective you can be in helping make decisions about where to go next.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful to know, actually. So number one is consistency, right? In the way they communicate, the way that you lead your team. And the other one is hands-on experience. So you can actually give really practical guidance. I'm really curious, what's the best piece of feedback you've received on yourself or your leadership style through your journey?
Oh, the best piece of feedback I received. I'll just share one that's recent. And I was having a executive coaching session. I have an executive coach to help my development in various areas. And my CEO joined to participate in that session, which we do frequently to make sure we're working on the right things and that we're discussing the right topics in those coaching sessions.
Interesting.
And in that, I was explaining something I'm working on for an upcoming period of time. And our CEO, Thomas, said, actually, Elizabeth, I think that's something you're already doing really well. Perhaps your own perception of how you're showing up and what you're delivering hasn't caught up with the reality of how you're performing in that area.
Interesting.
Which was, of course, something I found flattering. But more importantly, it was a good reminder to sort of step back and think, okay, how is my performance perceived by others around me? And am I making assumptions maybe that my performance is stronger or candidly not as strong as maybe I think it is? And soliciting active and regular feedback. That's what I took out of that, the importance of doing that, making sure I'm asking more often. Does this meet your needs? Am I delivering the way you would expect? And perhaps the answer sometimes is, yeah, you're absolutely meeting the mark. And then I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can go work on another development area.
Okay. That's really interesting. I imagine that was really heartening to hear that you're actually stronger in a given area than you thought you were.
It was. And then he, of course, quickly followed that up with, and instead, maybe you should work on this, which is good, right? You want to lean into the growth mindset.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a coaching session without opportunities to improve. So
Right.
Yeah, glad to hear that. And I'm glad to hear that you guys have executive coaches as well. I think for people who are, again, just kind of starting the MBA, maybe thinking about starting the MBA or just out of the MBA program, we look up to leaders like you and kind of view you as a finished article. So hearing that you're still going through a process of growth and evolution, and it's encouraging, right? It encourages the rest of us to continue to try and improve ourselves.
Yeah. And I think with that comes the need to regularly evaluate what coaches you have around you, if they're the right coaches for the moment. And also this idea that you may need a coach for a specific decision and not for an arc of time. And so I have mentors and collaborators with whom I consult maybe about a specific thing versus a whole body of improvement work, and balancing those two things, kind of the longer arc coach versus the point in time advisor, is important, and making sure you have a roster of both available to you.
That is really interesting. That's a nuanced take on coaching that I've generally never heard before. Think about this point in time sort of guidance and leadership. I mean, I think to some extent, maybe that dovetails into the next question I had about some of the details of the chief revenue officer role and the types of decisions that you need to make and exactly what that comprises. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the CRO responsibility at GitHub?
It dovetails nicely because the CRO role is pretty broad, and that's why I need folks consulting in specific areas at specific times, because the CRO role, the remit, is everything from a customer coming to the website and engaging us for an initial conversation. So the sales organization, the pre-sales organization, the business development team. Then we have our solutions engineers and our technical overlays. So folks who can go very deep on enterprise architecture and migrations and implementation work. We then have a whole team once the customer has purchased GitHub or started using GitHub that helps them with their adoption and ongoing support. So customer success managers, we have a support organization that's pretty large. We do hundreds of thousands of tickets a year, as you would expect. And we have a lot of partners and then folks who do expert services delivery, the entire realm of that revenue organization. And we've grown now to over 2 billion in revenue. We've got 150 million users on the platform. And so on any given day, we could be answering a question from an individual user or helping one of the largest enterprises in the world adopt GitHub at massive global scale.
I remember you mentioned slightly earlier in the conversation, you joined GitHub when it had somewhere around 200 employees. How big is the organization now?
The revenue organization is about 1,200, and the company now is more than double that.
Oh, my word. Wow. It's huge. What are some of the ways that the company has changed over time during that process of evolution?
About 6 years ago, we were acquired by Microsoft, and Microsoft operates GitHub as an independent entity. But being part of that Microsoft ecosystem means we can take advantage now of so many resources for our customers that Microsoft can offer. So that's been one major shift, is just the Microsoft relationship and how it's helped us deliver even more, I'd say, particularly from an enterprise perspective to our customers. And then the customer portfolio has changed quite a bit, as you would expect. We have digital natives like Etsy and Stripe on the platform, which were in their days of infancy when we first started as a company. We've kind of grown together. Mm-hmm. And also now we have the largest enterprises in the world using GitHub as a platform. and now increasingly using GitHub Copilot. And I think when I think about kind of step changes in who we are as an organization and the journey, the introduction of GitHub Copilot is obviously top on that list, because suddenly we went to a development platform with the first AI pair programmer adopted at massive global scale. We have over 77,000 organizations using Copilot.
Wow.
And that was really just the beginning. So now we're thinking through, okay, where does AI-powered software development go next? That's what keeps me super excited about doing this work.
That's perfect. We definitely wanted to lean into a discussion about AI. It wouldn't be a tech podcast without it. So maybe zooming out from Copilot specifically, what's GitHub's AI strategy overall?
Yeah, I mentioned we started with GitHub Copilot, which is an AI pair programmer. Developers are creators, and we wanted to help them create software more easily. And now it's how do we keep removing barriers so that they can deliver more quickly? And how can we keep making it easier? And I think prompting in natural language, for example, is the next wave of software development. And we've been able to deliver that with Copilot Chat. And then we'll deliver things like GitHub Spark and a free tier of Copilot for developers, so making it even more accessible. When I think about it from an enterprise perspective, it's how can they adopt AI quickly and at scale in a way that's secure and responsible. So our AI strategy is very much grounded in the intersection of really incredible technology that's shipping at tremendous velocity, wrapped in really responsible AI practices, and delivered with the enterprise controls customers expect. Highly regulated industries, you think about a Citigroup or a Fidelity or Lufthansa, right? They have very specific ways in which they need to adopt technology, and we want to make sure we can meet their needs while still going fast and innovating. So that's really how we're thinking about it.
Interesting. I'm curious for most people, AI really sort of came on the radar with ChatGPT, large language models. And within the span of 2.5 years, it feels like it's been developing at a breakneck pace. There were all the large language models, and it seemed like it was just ChatGPT. There were all these other ones. And we've been talking about the reasoning models, and now everybody's talking about agents. I'm really curious, which AI trends are you most excited about right now? And also, which AI trends are you most concerned about right now?
From an excitement perspective, you mentioned agents, and I think this is where we go next from a software development perspective. We're working on agent mode in Copilot, and that's going to allow Copilot really to iterate on its own, but with full visibility for the developer, so that developer can stay natively in the loop or slightly adjacent to the loop that the agent is running. And we're going to see them, I think, just become more and more integral to the development lifecycle. It's going to be from thought to production before too long. That's what I'm most excited about. How do we do that, again, in a way that's responsible and in a way that meets our enterprise customer needs? What I'm concerned about, I think, really just keeping up with the pace and the tempo of change. Internally as an organization, we've had to change how we're operating because new models are being shipped so quickly. New capabilities are being shipped so quickly. We need to be able to get that information out to our customers to answer their questions, to reassure them that if something is enterprise ready. So we're having to increase our velocity just in how we operate as a company. That's a little bit uncomfortable, but that's good. That means growth is happening. So it's not necessarily a concern as much as it is a necessary reaction and growth as both individuals and as an organization.
Interesting. You talked about keeping up and keeping pace. And it's even for someone who's doing my MBA program right now and not working full time, it just seems like every single day there's something new and interesting happening. I'm really curious what resources have been most helpful for you to stay up to date with all of the changes in AI.
I don't think that's possible. I start my day looking at two things. I look at, of course, the top headlines on the various trade publications and just sort of what's happening in the world with AI. But then I'm looking really carefully at the GitHub changelog and then also what we're shipping next. And admittedly, I'll wake up and pull that up and say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was coming. And ping our product leader and say, Mario, I need more information on this to get to the field teams. And he's like, I know, we're going as fast as we can to get you all the answers. And again, some days I wake up and sort of have to take a deep breath and prepare myself for the day and how much we're going to have to absorb. But it's such an exciting, thrilling time. And boy, is it really fun to be at the forefront of this, what GitHub's able to deliver and what we're bringing to our customers.
Yeah, it's incredible. some extent, it almost feels like working in an industry or like in a factory around the invention of electricity. It just feels like anything and everything is possible, and we can go 1,000 different directions, and lots of new uses are being found for this new innovation as the days and feels like the hours go by. Okay, let's talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities. So we met after your brilliant guest speaking feature at Angela Duckworth's Wharton MBA class focused on grit and perseverance. What are some of the most difficult setbacks you faced in your career, and how have they shaped you, and how did you move past them?
Sure. So career setbacks, I think back to that time at the DMV when I was new and certainly felt like I was working on projects that perhaps I was a bit unqualified for based on my experience, but doing the homework, really leaning in, delivering work I was really proud of. I did face some colleagues who I think underestimated me because of my age. And it was just an early in career lesson about experiencing other people's assumptions about what you were or were not able to do. For me, that made me all the grittier, taking it back to the discussion we had in Professor Duckworth's class. It was very motivating to me to be a bit underestimated and made me work even harder. And that's true today. There's certainly times in enterprise sales or as you're in a high growth company that you're going to miss the mark. You're not going to deliver on a ambitious revenue goal, or you're not going to be able to deliver features for a customer that you'd promised them. And I think just making sure you're continuing to show up and do the homework, be as prepared as you can be, make the decisions you can based on the information you have at the moment, and be very honest and transparent in that process is the best you can do. I've certainly gotten better about being very clear in my communication on what's possible and what's not, or where I see risk, doing my best to mitigate it, and then not dwelling on the misses because they're going to happen.
Love that. Love that. I think a lot of the really young, bright-eyed, ambitious MBAs that will be graduating the Wharton program will have probably similar career experiences, right? Going right into or middle management roles where they're relatively young, they aren't as well regarded as they would want to be, and will kind of have to fight their way through the organization to get stuff to happen. So I think really inspiring words. I'm really curious about how you're managing to keep all of these different balls in the air. You're an actively involved mom, you're a highly visible executive at a leading global technology firm. How are you doing this? And what advice would you give to ambitious leaders looking to have full and fulfilling lives, both at work and
It's a lot about grace and giving yourself grace and recognizing that you have a certain amount of energy you can devote to your work. You have a certain amount of energy you can devote to your family. You have a certain amount of energy you have to devote to your hobbies and your own health. So for me, it's really making sure I'm prioritizing the one or two things that are most important for that day. For that day, usually the single most important thing to prioritize is sleep. The second most important thing is health. So I sleep a lot and I'm very conscientious about protecting that time. And I try to get a lot of exercise during the week. That's what's important to me. Some people may prefer to read, to cook, to take a walk, whatever that thing is, making sure you're prioritizing it. And then for me, I have kind of my code words, both with my team at work and with my family, that signal to them when I'm overwhelmed. When I mentioned earlier when we were talking that being predictable and being consistent are most important to me as a leader. And I can say just a few words to my team, my colleagues, and they'll know maybe they need to give me a little bit of time to review something, a little bit of space. I can say I really need to create more room in my calendar today for deep work. And the team knows that means, okay, let's make some changes here so that Elizabeth can dig into something she needs to. And at home, I'll say to my daughter, if I'm getting a little bit antsy, a little bit frustrated, all the things are happening at once, I'll say, I'm doing the best that I can to my daughter. And that's a signal to her. She knows, okay, I just need to give my mom a minute and ask this question again after she's taken a few deep breaths. And so having, say, that code with the people around you who can help support you is really important, and doing that in a calm and clear way, and then prioritizing your most important things and not being apologetic about that.
That's amazing. It really is. I'd love to get like a practical sleep tip from you that I think a lot of Wharton students would probably find very helpful both at this stage and the next. what have you found has been most helpful in ensuring that you get the number of hours of sleep you need?
Being really consistent about it. Really consistent about it. You got to go to bed at the same time and try to get up at the same time to the extent you can. And of course, travel impacts that and tight deadlines impact that. But if you work backwards from when you want to go to sleep, it'll go a long way.
Interesting. Okay. We'll keep that in mind. And I think that's a great transition to kind of the final section of this podcast. You just have a number of rapid fire questions before we get to the interesting hook from the beginning. So what's a great book you read recently?
The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. My chief of staff gave it to me for Christmas. She is an avid reader, and she said it was the best book she read in all of 2024. So expectations were incredibly high, and it delivered by a mile. It was a great read, short read too.
Amazing. Let's get that title again.
The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. It's fiction. It's lightweight. The writing is impeccable. It's a joy.
Excellent. All of us who are in Tech Talks will go look that up immediately on Amazon. Which one word or 3-word phrase best summarizes your life or career philosophy?
Do the homework.
Do the homework.
Do the homework. Be ready. I attribute, I'd say, 70% of my career success to being prepared for the conversation, the meeting, the presentation, the interaction.
Okay. Do the homework. Really helpful. And final one, what are you most hopeful and excited about in future?
I'm seeing what we're doing every day to bring agents to a fully native software development lifecycle all the way across GitHub. And boy, I'm excited about what that's going to mean for software development, meaning not only making true software developers, today's software developers, more successful and more productive, but what that means about the definition of software development in the future. Me sitting down to start the day and spinning up an app like GitHub Spark, folks maybe with non-traditional backgrounds and their ability to access software development as a career in the future. It's thrilling to think about where we're going to be in 10 years in the era of really everyone being a creator.
Interesting. So the democratization of software development.
That's right.
That's brilliant. Elizabeth, this is an incredibly engaging, outstanding interview. Thank you so much. Thank you. As we come to an end, would love to know your answer to the initial question. What's something about you that someone could only possibly know after listening to this podcast?
You asked me about my favorite book. I am a library nut. So I go every weekend, and it's not just because I love to read, but it is because I love a physical book in my hands when I read.
Oh.
And if they're weathered and a little beaten up, all the better. They just make me happy. And it makes me think about all the history those books have and all the places they've been on their journeys in and out of the library.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so now we know what a perfect gift to you would look like.
Yeah, a refreshed library card, because I lose mine all the time.
Good to know. Good to know. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining Word and Tech Talks. It really was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.